So getting struck by lightning is, incredibly rare. But trying to actually capture that lightning, like bottle it up and use it to power your entire house for the next 20 years.
Yeah, that's borderline impossible.
Right. It's impossible. And yet, when we look at the modern digital landscape, that is exactly what we expect human beings to do the second they achieve viral internet fame.
Oh, absolutely.
We see that initial flash, that sudden explosion of followers, and we just assume they've crossed the finish line. Like, they made it.
Well, and we treat virality as a destination, right? The cultural narrative basically tells us that once you hit, say, 1 million views or you get this massive celebrity cosign, you've permanently made it. But, I mean, any serious examination of the creator economy reveals a much darker, a far more volatile reality. The absolute hardest part of this industry isn't getting the world's attention.
Yeah, the attention is cheap now.
Exactly. The part that actually breaks people, both financially and, honestly, psychologically, is trying to keep that attention without completely losing your identity in the process.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We're unpacking a fascinating real-time case study of this exact phenomenon.
It's a perfect example.
It really is. So if you spend any time on social media, particularly around like fitness or comedy content, you have very likely come across a creator from Rwanda named Enoch Uwazai.
Right, though most of the internet knows him by his digital persona, Kagarara.
Kagarara, yes. Or initially Ashton Small. He just skyrocketed into the international spotlight through this very specific, really unique blend of distinctive comedy, intense fitness challenges, and just heavily leaning into parodies of the massive global influencer Ashton Hall.
And that collaboration, I mean, it's the fulcrum of his entire current trajectory. This wasn't just, a fleeting shout out where a larger creator reacted to a video and then moved on.
No, it became a whole thing.
It evolved into an ongoing partnership that has exponentially amplified Kagara's visibility. I mean, he is currently standing at the exact intersection of local authenticity and global virality. But this brings us to the fundamental challenge of his professional development. Like, how does someone practically navigate the absolute whiplash of sudden fame? We can't predict the future, obviously, but we can make evidence-based projections based on how creator careers typically develop.
Right, and before we can map out where Kagarara goes from here, we really need to dissect the engine powering his current launchpad. Because his growth has been, nothing short of staggering.
Oh, yeah. Huge numbers.
And it's built on a few very distinct pillars. You have the recognizable appearance, the comedic timing, and of course, Ashton Hall publicly declaring his personal goal is to help Kagarara reach 1 million Instagram followers.
That's a massive endorsement.
It is. When I look at this dynamic, I kind of picture a rocket ship that has just been strapped to this massive external booster. Ashton Hall is that booster.
I like that analogy, yeah.
He's providing this incredible amount of thrust, pushing Kagarara higher and faster into the cultural stratosphere than he could ever, realistically achieve on his own in that short of a time frame.
Well, and that thrust, it translates into cultural capital incredibly fast. I mean, just look at how Rwandan tourism officials are already exploring opportunities to work with him to promote the country.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And when a national government looks at a comedy creator and decides, they want him representing their global interests, you have officially transcended the label of an internet meme.
You're an institution at that point.
Exactly. You possess real leverage. Governments recognize that creators like Kagarara offer this direct line to younger international demographics that traditional marketing campaigns they simply cannot reach.
Plus, underlying all the comedy and the physical challenges, there is this incredibly powerful core message he promotes, which is disability is not inability.
Right.
He brings this deeply inspiring life story of personal perseverance to the table. He's performing these intense physical feats while navigating his own physical limitations. It adds a layer of undeniable human depth to what could, otherwise just be seen as slapstick comedy.
It gives it roots.
Yeah, exactly. But getting back to the physics of that rocket ship analogy, eventually that external booster has to detach. Gravity always wins. So the fundamental question for Kagarara's career development is, what happens the moment the Ashton Hall momentum inevitably fades?
Right.
Does he have enough of his own fuel to stay in orbit, or does he come crashing back down?
And that tension, that's what defines the first major trajectory we need to explore for his professional development. Let's look at the first scenario, the path where he attempts to reach that stable orbit on his own and evolve into one of Africa's most dominant standalone creators.
Okay, scenario 1. scaling the mountain.
Scaling the mountain, yeah. But to pull that off, he has to execute a maneuver that is, frankly, notoriously difficult in the digital space. He has to transition from a dependent persona to an independent brand.
The mechanics of that just seem exhausting. I mean, he would need to maintain a grueling pace of consistent posting while simultaneously, weaning his audience off the exact content that brought them there in the first place.
Yes.
He has to secure international collaborations that have absolutely nothing to do with Ashton Hall, maybe in tourism or fitness or motivation.
It is exhausting, and it requires a complete psychological shift for the audience. Because parody is, by definition, an inherently dependent art form.
Right. You need the original to make the joke work.
Exactly. Your entire value proposition is derived from the subject you are mocking or imitating. Think about cover bands or even child stars in Hollywood.
Well, that's a good comparison.
When the public falls in love with you as a miniature version of something else, like Ashton Small, they feel a sense of ownership over that specific image. To break that dependency, Kagarara has to convince millions of people who initially showed up for a quick laugh that his original thoughts, his distinct comedic voice, are actually the main attraction.
I have to push back on the wisdom of forcing that shift, though.
Okay, why?
Well, I understand the desire for independence, but isn't it incredibly dangerous for him to abandon the exact niche that made him famous? We have all seen the backlash when a successful musician drastically changes their sound on their sophomore album.
The fans hate it.
The core fans totally revolt.
Yeah.
If Kagarara has millions of people tuning in specifically for the Ashton Hall parody dynamic, wouldn't pivoting just alienate his base? Why fix what's so obviously printing views?
I get that, but in the creator economy, remaining static is a guaranteed death sentence, whereas pivoting is only a temporary pain.
A temporary pain.
Yeah, it's the ultimate paradox of internet fame. Parody has a definitive, unavoidable expiration date. The joke always gets old. So while pivoting might cost him some of those initial followers who, only ever wanted the Ashton Small gimmick, refusing to pivot guarantees he will lose all of them eventually when the broad cultural trend moves on.
I see.
He has to build a psychological bridge for the audience, taking them from the parody to the person.
And that concept, moving from the parody to the person, I think that opens up a completely different professional trajectory, one that might not rely on entertainment at all.
Scenario 2.
Right, scenario 2. Because if relying purely on algorithmic comedy is a rigged game with an expiration date, perhaps his biggest long-term opportunity lies in something far more profound. What if the real hook isn't who he imitates, or even how funny he is, but simply who he is?
Culturally and financially, this is where the actual longevity exists. This is the path of transitioning into a dedicated disability advocate and a motivational speaker.
The source text actually identifies this as having the strongest long-term potential.
It does, and for good reason. He has the raw materials to become an ambassador for disability inclusion, not just across Rwanda, but across the entire African continent.
I look at his current content model almost like a digital Trojan horse.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, the fitness challenges, the viral comedy, the Ashton Hall connection. That is the shiny wooden horse. It looks fun, it's entertaining, and most importantly, it gets people to willingly open the gates and bring him into their daily feeds.
Right, they invite him in.
Exactly. But once he is inside, the real payload is delivered, which is his authentic life story, his resilience, and his message that disability is not inability. The comedy was merely the mechanism to capture attention, but his shared humanity is the anchor that will actually make an audience stay for a decade.
That mechanism is exactly why stories of human resilience inherently outlast internet comedy trends. Let's look at the psychology of audience loyalty for a second.
Okay.
We follow entertainers to kill time. We watch a funny reel while waiting in line for coffee, and we forget about it 5 minutes later. If an entertainer stops making us laugh, we unfollow them without a second thought because the transaction is over.
But we follow leaders to find meaning.
Precisely. When someone follows Kagarara because his story of overcoming physical adversity made them feel seen or, gave them a sense of hope in their own struggles, that audience becomes fiercely, deeply loyal.
They're invested.
They aren't just consuming content. They are investing in a human being. A career rooted in public speaking and advocacy based on that kind of emotional connection is infinitely more sustainable than waking up every day wondering what viral challenge you have to participate in to stay relevant. It fundamentally transitions him from a content creator to a cultural leader.
But practically speaking, the day-to-day reality of being a cultural leader and advocate is an entirely different job than being an Instagram comedian.
Oh, totally different.
It requires completely different operational skill set, doesn't it?
It really does. He would have to move away from relying on short-form, high-dopamine clips. It means mastering longer-form storytelling, conducting serious interviews, engaging in community outreach, and navigating institutional partnerships.
Right.
It is no longer about gaming a social media algorithm. It is about building deep, tangible connections with youth organizations, nonprofits, and policymakers.
Which sounds incredibly rewarding, but also immensely difficult. And if he fails to execute either of these transitions, like if he can't evolve into a standalone digital superstar and he doesn't successfully pivot into a purpose-driven advocate, we're left looking at scenario 3.
The most dangerous one.
Yeah, the most dangerous and sadly the most common trajectory for sudden internet stars. He becomes a fading echo.
The reality where the popularity simply evaporates as quickly as it materialized. If his entire content strategy remains tethered to the Ashton Small persona, the cultural relevance will inevitably wane.
Because the joke gets old.
Exactly. The audience will become numb to the repetition, the trend will die, and his platform will shrink back to obscurity. This is the tragic, well-documented cycle of creators tied to a single viral moment.
We see it constantly across platforms. A creator has one massive lightning-in-a-bottle hit, and they become terrified to do anything else. They turn into the digital equivalent of a one-hit wonder from the 1990s, forced to play their single famous song at county fairs for the rest of their lives because the audience refuses to listen to their new material.
It's a sad reality.
But knowing all of this, knowing that stagnation is a trap, why do so many brilliant creators fall into it? Doesn't the architecture of the modern internet practically force them into this corner?
It is less of a corner and more of an invisible prison, a phenomenon known as algorithmic capture.
Algorithmic capture.
Yeah. We often talk about algorithms as if they are just neutral computer programs, but for a creator whose livelihood depends on them, they function as a psychological cage. Algorithms are ruthless pattern matching machines. They are designed to serve users exactly what they engaged with yesterday to keep them on the platform as long as possible.
So if a creator tries something new, the algorithm actively punishes them.
It absolutely does. When a creator like Kagarara attempts to pivot, say he posts a serious 10-minute video about disability rights in Rwanda instead of a 10-second comedy sketch, the algorithm doesn't immediately know who to serve that new content to.
Right.
So the video isn't distributed as widely, the engagement plummets.
And the mental toll of that must be devastating. You are used to seeing millions of views, and suddenly you struggle to hit a fraction of that.
The psychological impact is profound. The creator looks at their dashboard, sees the red downward arrows, and panic sets in. Their sense of self-worth and financial security takes a massive hit. So what do?
They go back to the hit song.
They retreat to safety. They go back to the repetitive gimmick that the algorithm understands and rewards. The platform essentially trains the creator through a system of digital punishments and rewards to remain a one-trick pony.
So the audience becomes a warden, and the algorithm is the lock on the door.
That's a great way to put it.
To escape becoming a fading echo, a creator has to possess the immense, almost irrational discipline to accept a massive temporary drop in views. They have to willingly walk through the fire, retraining the algorithm and their audience to accept this new, evolved identity, all while playing a long game in a digital ecosystem designed exclusively for short-term dopamine hits.
And if he cannot weather that agonizing transition phase, if the anxiety of falling numbers causes him to cling solely to the Ashton Hall Association for safety, his popularity will fade the moment the algorithm finds a new shiny object to promote.
But knowing the odds are stacked against him and knowing the algorithm is practically begging him to fail, how does someone actually build a safety net? Like, what is the tangible blueprint Kagarara needs to execute over the next 3 to 5 years to ensure he maximizes this incredible platform?
The blueprint to surviving sudden fame is entirely rooted in radical diversification. He has to systematically decouple his identity from his initial viral hook.
Okay, so step 1.
The first step is recalibrating his content. He should keep fitness and physical feats as one element of his identity, but it can no longer be the entirety of his brand.
He has to prove he is more than just a guy lifting weights in a funny way.
Exactly.
He needs to heavily invest in original comedy, completely divorced from parody, to establish his own unique comedic voice.
Furthermore, he needs to aggressively document his daily life and reality in Rwanda. This is crucial for his transition.
Why is that part so important?
Because right now, to a global audience, he risks being an internet abstraction like a meme that exists only on their phones. By actively telling his life story and showing his environment, he grounds himself. He becomes a fully realized, relatable human being rooted in a specific culture.
It builds that psychological bridge we talked about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
The blueprint also involves expanding his professional network locally. He cannot rely solely on one massive international cosign from Ashton Hall. He needs to cultivate collaborations with other prominent creators across the African continent, weaving himself into the broader regional digital economy.
And perhaps the most critical step for long-term survival is launching a foundation or a formalized initiative supporting people with disabilities.
Wait, why a foundation specifically? Why is that the tipping point?
Because it fundamentally alters his economic and social model. It shifts him from a direct-to-consumer entertainment model, which is entirely dependent on the whims of an algorithm, to a business-to-business institutional model.
Well, that's smart.
Right. A foundation relies on grants, corporate partnerships, and measurable real-world impact. It institutionalizes his advocacy. He goes from talking about a cause on Instagram to actively managing a recognized organization.
That makes perfect sense. It cements his legacy in the physical world, making him immune to digital trend cycles. If he successfully executes this multifaceted blueprint balancing fitness, establishing original comedy, sharing authentic storytelling, building regional networks, and institutionalizing his advocacy, he achieves the ultimate career evolution.
The complete transition of his identity. He stops being known globally as the Rwandan guy who parodies Ashton Hall and simply becomes known, respected, and recognized as Kagarara.
When we look at the totality of his professional landscape, the fundamental question isn't whether Enoch Uzai has talent or drive or charisma. I mean, he has definitively proved he possesses all three just by capturing the world's attention against staggering odds.
Absolutely.
The question that will dictate the rest of his life is whether he can engineer that initial spark of attention into a sustainable, independent engine.
Exactly. Viral fame is just the spark. A lasting brand is the engine. The race is to build the engine before the spark burns out. If he manages this transition with intention, there is every reason to believe that within 5 years he will be regarded as one of East Africa's most influential digital creators and a transformative voice for inclusion.
And that reality is the perfect place to wrap up today's deep dive. Kagarara's ongoing journey is an absolute masterclass in the immense pressures, the hidden traps, and the necessary strategies of adapting to sudden global success. We will certainly be watching to see which of these paths he ultimately carves out for himself.
It is going to be a defining case study for the next generation of creators, for sure.
Before you go, I want you, listening right now, to take a hard look at your own digital consumption today. Open up your phone and scroll through the creators you follow. How many of those accounts do you tune into just for a quick repetitive gimmick, a funny voice, a crazy stunt, a brief hit of dopamine? And how many do you follow because you are genuinely invested in their life story, their struggles, and their growth? Think about it. Which of those two types of creators are you actually going to remember 5 years from now?